You're listening to Data Science Leaders, the premier podcast for executives tackling the world's most important challenges using the power of machine learning. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Data Science Leaders podcast. Today we are extremely fortunate to have with us Alec Liskov. Alec is the person who leads product management for data science and is the person who established the first data science product team at Verizon. Alec, thank you very much for being with us today.
So thank you so much for having me.
Alec, wanted to start us off with, so why did Verizon want to establish a data science product team? What was the origin behind this?
Sure. So to tell you the reason, we have to go back a few years when Verizon hired our first chief data analytics officer, Linda Avery. As Linda came into the organization, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the first few people to join her, we started to think about how do we build a chief data and AI office or team for a company the size of Verizon, for the company with the ambitions with Verizon, as well as a company that has the assets and the capabilities that Verizon has. And as we were thinking about building, as you might imagine, there was a lot of standard components when you're building a CDO organization, such as a data science organization or team, a data engineering team, an architecture team. But one of the elements that was quite unusual, but instrumental to our success and to where we are today, was the establishment of a business enablement and engagement team. And the focus of that team was really to be a lot more centered around the problem, a lot more centered around our business stakeholders, and allow us to be a lot more strategic in how we approach building solutions. And so that team, very early on, was the one in charge of what Linda famously calls path to value for our organization. In fact, she spoke at Rev 3 last year about the importance of path to value. It really boils down to making sure that every single initiative in our organization, whether it's a project or a product or a capability, is linked to business results and business outcomes, measured and verified by objective transformation teams or finance teams. And so that's where we began. But as we grew as an organization, and today we sit at almost 1,000 people, again, across these different functions, we've come to the realization that continuing to scale through people will be one of the challenges that we have to overcome. At the end of the day, we've done a great job of contributing a tremendous amount of value to the company, and we've built credibility, and we've continued to expand our book of work. But as we think about the next frontier, the next area of growth, if you will, for the organization, product management was the clear answer as to how do we pivot to building capabilities, and how do we build data products and AI products or data science products that enable the organization to continue to drive their outcomes at the same time while being efficient on our side in terms of headcount, in terms of resources. So that's how we've evolved from a business enablement and business engagement function focused on strategy to now a product management organization that's really focused on building product teams and focusing on building capabilities.
Well, it almost sounds like the product management approach is sort of a linchpin in being able to scale. It sounds like that is sort of the organizational principle to go from what sounded like was a handful of folks when Linda started to the 1,000-person organization that it is today. Or am I overstating it?
It is a linchpin. It is really the way by which we think we're going to be able to unlock even more value for Verizon. So, like I said, we've done tremendously well, but the bar is always higher, so we're always looking for ways to push the boundaries of what we can do as a team, and also as a way to really bring a new level of speed of building innovation within data science. As we know, the space has evolved a lot since 3-4 years ago when we were talking about models, but now we're really talking about capabilities.
Excellent. Well, could you help us understand what a product management approach entails, and what do product teams look like when it comes to data science? What is it that's different from a traditional data science team and from traditional processes? What is it that's new about this?
Great question. So I think there are several aspects. It starts with a fundamental understanding of kind of product thinking or a product mindset, and that's really the basics in terms of how do you think about, instead of trying to stick to a schedule, you're really focused on continuous improvement and trying to continuously look towards outcomes. When it comes to investment and budget, Product thinking means I'm not trying to simply stick to a specific budget, but rather thinking about long-term investment in capabilities that create sustainable growth. These are really fundamental aspects that, in my opinion, can be applied whether you're doing product management or you're in fact just doing data science projects. And ultimately, though, they begin to focus the team on outcomes instead of output. A lot of the data science teams, and part of your question is traditional data science teams. I've never seen two data science teams that are alike. There are always many different flavors of a data science team. I've personally worked in many different kinds of data science teams, but ultimately the shift from output to outcome is really what we're trying to establish and create. Product thinking also means the team is focused on value creation, as opposed to just managing a budget or trying to stay on time. And ultimately, it creates an enormous amount of autonomy for the team so that they're less dependent on a project manager or less dependent on a key stakeholder, and rather they're ultimately responsible or accountable for a given outcome, business outcome, and driving towards it in an autonomous way. So some of the differences or what's part of our approach here at Verizon is we've formalized the work around durable product teams. So what that means is pairing data scientists with not only data engineers and ML engineers, but all the other support functions, including data analysts, and in some cases, or in many cases, even front-end engineers, if we're trying to deploy a new experience to our customers, so that this durable product team is able to work together and end-to-end establish or get to an outcome. As I mentioned, a big focus of outcomes over output. One of the big challenges that many data scientists or many data science teams face at large companies is there's so many layers in the organization that by the time the data scientist, the request comes to them for a model that needs to be developed to enable a capability or to enable a certain functionality in a product, there are layers and layers of abstraction that take place, which actually really aren't helping the data scientists understand the problem that needs to be solved and ultimately participate in the process of brainstorming and ideating on how can we solve that problem with data science. That's actually one of my biggest pet peeves is when the business teams simply come over to us and sort of, I like to call it, throw requirements over the wall. Just build us a model and we'll take it from there, right? And we've done a great deal of work, as I said, in building trust and really being able to proactively work with the business team so that the data scientists as well as the engineers are part of the decisioning process, part of the brainstorming process on how do you come up with solutions that elegantly take advantage of data science or machine learning. I mean, there's more to, again, product practices that we apply, but I'll pause here, see if I'm on the right track.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a key element of why we're looking to do this is to move from, for lack of a better term, ad hoc insights or one-off developments of an application that then just sort of sits there. And it's thinking about this from the long term. And when you're talking about durable product teams, these are durable product teams because they're supporting what are going to be durable, long-lived products that are going to continue to add value on an ongoing, sustained basis and be continuously improved versus what's often happened in times past, still happens a lot today, where it's folks provide an insight, they do an analysis, maybe it's acted on, and maybe it does lead to incredible things, but it's a one-off. It doesn't build on itself. Is that fair to say? There's this element of building in longevity around the effort and from the get-go ensuring that this is going to drive value on a repeated, sustained basis.
Absolutely. And actually, that's part of the thinking in terms of where do we apply product management and where we do not, right? There are still times, to your point, where data science serves as just an insight or an enabler for a very important strategic decision. Or there's a project that has a start and an end date and needs to be done on time to enable a very specific capability or initiative. And so in those cases, you typically don't apply product management because it doesn't add as much value as it could when you focus on more long-term strategic opportunities.
But it sounds like there's an element of this which it sort of starts out with there's a philosophical element to this around what it is that we're trying to achieve and how we're going to go about doing it. And it sounds like there's also very that translates into very practical processes, and it sounds like maybe even team structure. Could you speak a little bit to those elements as well?
Absolutely. So, in terms of practices and team structure, as I said, we're focused on building durable product teams. In general, we are really trying to minimize the amount of meetings that the teams have to sit in. Meetings are necessary evil, but we're trying to stick to very specific set of ceremonies, such as daily touch points, weekly stakeholder meetings, or demos in some cases, depending on the product. And ultimately, we're aiming for 80% of the time to be given back to the developers or data scientists and engineers so they can focus on designing and building the best solution and really spending quality time thinking about the problem. And that's not easy, right? That takes active work on the part of the product manager or on the part of the leader to remove a lot of that waste that seems to be, pretty prolific these days in terms of meetings and discussions, and really to enable the team to focus on the problem by reducing the distance. What I like to say is reducing the distance between the technical team and the user or the problem. So that's really a big part of this. In addition to that, we do leverage asynchronous communication a lot. We're a very distributed team. Half of our team is in the US, the other half is in India. And so naturally, we gravitate towards using a lot of tools. We use Jira quite a bit. Jira is not perfect, but we do keep track of all the work that we do in Jira so that there's full transparency in terms of what each product team is working on at what point, and teams are able to really understand what others are driving and how they can collaborate together. We use Confluence and many other tools to really emphasize asynchronous collaboration. And that's one of the biggest unlocks that we have in terms of creating agility, creating speed, while at the same time keeping the team connected. And then last but not least, there's a lot of work that we've done in terms of processes, as you said it, to really put the accountability on the entire team and every member in the team. One good example I'll give you is in the past, many of our data scientists, while responsible for developing the models, validating the models, ultimately testing the models, many of them would take a more hands-off approach, as you called it, once the model gets deployed to production. So once the model is deployed, they take a more hands-off approach in terms of not being able to, or in some cases, not having access to the data in terms of what the front end experience is doing, or in terms of what the application that they're enabling is doing, or perhaps what the customer is doing, or how it's interacting with their algorithm. And we've focused very heavily to ensure that for each product team, those impediments or those disconnects are no longer present, so that the data scientist is ultimately accountable for not only looking at their technical performance and how the model is performing on the back end, but actually evaluating, almost think of it as being almost like a data analyst, and evaluating and making sure that the algorithm is doing the right thing on the front end, or doing the right thing for the customer or for the end user or for the employee. And that's a big shift in terms of, again, processes and how we think about delivering not only models, but ultimately outcomes.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, how many business outcomes align towards an F1 score or a precision or recall?
Precisely.
Which is, yeah. In terms of then who it is who's leading this, because obviously the providing the processes and the tools is absolutely an accelerator for this. But it sounds like unless you have the right individuals who've got that mandate and who've got that understanding to be able to coordinate all of this, it sounds like it'd be very difficult. That would seem to be the product manager, but is that product manager sometimes also the data scientist, or is that product manager somebody who's coming from a different training? I mean, is this somebody? Can you take somebody who is coming out of a product management course for computer science and software engineering and pivot them to this role? Or is this more about taking a data scientist and giving them product skills and giving them additional training? Or indeed, is this an entirely different background that you groom these folks from?
No, so we're big believers in following a pretty standard product model, which means you want a strong product manager, somebody who may come from a technical background, may have studied computer science, may have even done some data science work in their past, but ultimately has spent time working as a product manager and really proving that they can lead a technical team. They can establish a clear vision for a product. They can drive the team to outcomes. They can create the kinds of efficiencies we talked about. So we actually we've hired some top product management talent from other technical companies out there. So these are folks who specialize in building technical products and technical capabilities. And that's of course in addition to hiring technical expertise that's used to working in this product way. But I also like to really focus on and underpin how important it is for everybody to be taken along this journey. There's a really big component around change management when it comes to evolving data science into product thinking and the product approach. Like you said, a lot of the folks that are traditionally have grown up in data science are used to the project model where they're given a specific problem, they're given a specific time frame, and they have to go and solve the problem. And product requires a very different way of organizing your thought process. It requires a very different focus. And then ultimately, it requires everybody on the team to be elevated in terms of their understanding of what product means, how product does, and how it's supposed to feel when you're on a product team versus a project team. And so there's a lot of work to be done by the leaders as well as the product managers to ensure that every person on the team understands what their role is and how it's evolving as part of this transformation.
How difficult or easy is it to take established materials, frameworks, and the like that from the software engineering side and port that over to data science? It generally feels like, well, a lot of the things that apply on software engineering usually apply to data science. It's just usually harder because there's that additional data component to it. There's the fact that the world and the patterns that you're trying to detect always change. Does that apply as well to the product management side, that you need to take existing frameworks that are envisioned for software engineering and application development, and do you need to tweak them very heavily, or do you find that actually no, a lot of this can be ported over pretty easily and you can leverage a lot of the same training models, responsibilities, standard processes, and the like?
So there's a lot of portability, and the reason is product management or product is fundamentally about solving customer problems or customer needs. And so when you try and apply that lens to data science, it takes a little bit of extra work sometimes to really translate building a model or building a data set or a data product into how am I solving a customer problem or how am I solving an employee problem. And that work is really natural to a skilled product manager to be able to create that translation, to be able to create those linkages. And so ultimately what we found is actually certainly product managers who have worked on technical products is very helpful. So they understand a lot of the technology that we're trying to develop. They have to understand the underpinning platforms, the underpinning technologies, but ultimately that focus around outcomes and customer centricity, which is common with software engineering, is what brings the difference to the data science process.
But it sounds like it is beneficial, though, to carve out product managers who are specifically focused on data science so they can build expertise on data science products. Or is that just an intermediate step and you can envision that there would be a more general pool of product management for business applications, and data science really just plugs into that?
So I'm a big believer, and we've seen tremendous success at Verizon by specializing product managers in data and data science. As you mentioned, data is very different from software engineering. There's a lot of nuance. There's moving pieces. The data is always changing. The models are always evolving, deteriorating, need to be updated, need to be monitored consistently. And so ultimately, a product manager that understands that nuance and those differences is able to do a much better job at crafting the vision for the product, at aligning with stakeholders on expectations, on leading the team, knowing how to prioritize. Obviously, one of the biggest jobs and one of the most important jobs that a product manager has is prioritizing within a given time frame or a given sprint, let's say, what should the team focus on? And so knowing what is important in a data science workflow versus a software engineering workflow and the difference between those is critical. And so from our experience, finding folks that, again, have either a data science background or data analytics background, or they've perhaps worked extensively with data scientists on their traditional product teams, really helps find the right talent that is able to help us take these AI capabilities that we're trying to develop to where we need them to be. And I do think that for a general product manager, if I may use that term out there, if they want to pivot to product management and data science, they really should be spending ample amount of time understanding what are the nuances of machine learning, what are the nuances of data science, how do these things work, how are they completely different from traditional software engineering, in order for them to prepare and really rethink how product management is applied.
Well, I guess I'm curious on the other side. If you're thinking of data scientists or analysts who are thinking about taking on a product manager role, any thoughts or guidance for them? One, whether they should do this, and whether or not the considerations that they should be having in mind on whether or not they want to make that switch. But two, then, if they want to, what's the best way for them to go down that path?
So that's a great question. And I think the very first and very important question they should ask is whether they should make the switch. Because to your point, the roles are truly radically different. Once you are a product manager, you're doing a lot less technical work on a day-to-day basis, and you're a lot more strategically focused. And so the type of work you do is very different. Still, it could be just as rewarding, but ultimately quite a bit different. We've had one person on our team actually that effectively made that transition, and we enabled the transition by first giving them a role that was a product role, but really more of as a technical product owner who was responsible for really the day-to-day operations of the technical product. And the goal is to really over time enable them to grow into a true product manager. So I personally think that going from a data scientist directly into a product manager would be challenging for most, but finding some kind of an interim step like a technical product owner is a good stepping stone and a good way. But again, it's really something that is quite a big career decision or shift for most to make. So definitely has to be carefully considered.
Well, I mean, in many other organizations which aren't as fortunate to have a product management organization, especially one that supports the data scientists, I think quite a few data scientists find themselves being in that position where they're forced to act as the product manager. And so then, over time, they might have developed some of those skills, and then that might be the gateway drug, if you will, into product management. But as you say, for many of them, is this the reason they became a data scientist in the first place? Was this what they wanted to do and what their calling is? And I mean, obviously, we see on the software engineering side the split between developers and product managers, and those usually organizations having separate career paths for those. And again, we would expect something similar on the data science side as well, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
I would love to give folks a sense of what good looks like here. What does a successful product-led project look like? Are there particular success stories that you've seen, projects that you've seen at Verizon, where it was successful and where product management played a particularly star role in ensuring that it was successful?
Certainly. So I think before I dive into a couple of examples, I think it's important to go back and again establish and highlight that in general, organizations should be thinking about applying product management in data science or machine learning when they're serious about building long-term capabilities that are sustainable in nature, that come along with strong sponsorship, with strong funding, so that ultimately there's a path to being successful. Because building products is really difficult. At Verizon, we're fortunate to have several examples. And in fact, in general, within our organization, within AI and data, and specifically within AI Center, which is our data science organization, we have made the shift and are increasingly focusing on building AI capabilities as opposed to just enabling projects with data science. And so there are several examples. The first I'll talk about is personalization AI, which was our attempt to really elevate the practice and the use of data science and machine learning to improve our customers' experiences to a whole new level, to a whole new system. Where we started, we've been doing personalization for a good 4 or 5 years. In fact, if I have to think creatively here, we've been doing personalization for well over a decade. The marketing team has been using our team's models from the very beginning to target, segment, and personalize communications to our customers. But about 4 or 5 years ago, as the company started getting very serious about the push to digital, we wanted to really create a much more personalized contextual experiences for our customers. And what it ended up creating is this great need for data and great need for specifically machine learning models, recommender systems to drive many of those experiences. As we found success with many of those early experiences, the need continued to grow. And so we continued to invest in building more and more of these models, which recommend devices and accessories and all sorts of products and services to our customers, as well as prospects or prospective customers. But ultimately, what we found ourselves is a situation where each use case was independently managed, independently developed by a data scientist working with a team. And that created an enormous amount of inefficiencies for us as we tried to think about how do you manage this at scale. Again, when you think about we have hundreds of these personalized experiences live today across our website, application, chatbot, and many other channels that our customers can interact with us on. And so ultimately, we decided to make this investment in building a state of the art personalization AI platform. And so, what this is at a high level, the vision for the platform is we want an end to end personalization system that enables us to actually combine all of these algorithms into a common repository, a common system. And that enables us to increase the speed by which we deliver these personalized experiences while at the same time, again, creating much better algorithmic throughput. And so we started with that vision in mind, and we started with product management as the key discipline to start organizing how do we go about building this capability. And so it was quite a process in terms of spending time in the beginning setting up the vision for the product, aligning with stakeholders and sponsors on that vision and how things are going to change. Again, back to there's a large element of change management here. And then ultimately putting together the technical team to start building the system, to start building the components. What we have now been able to accomplish is, as I mentioned, effectively standardize all of these disparate algorithms into a common system, a single repository. 90% of the compute and the storage needs of the system are effectively shared across all the algorithms. So it's creating a tremendous amount of efficiency for us. And a data scientist on the team, on the personalization team, is now able to develop a new algorithm and deploy it in a record period of time. In the past, it used to take us well over a month, start to finish, and now we're able to do it in some cases just about a week or two. To be able to put something out there that we can actually start A/B testing against traffic, whether it's customer traffic or prospect traffic, and that has created an enormous tailwind in terms of how much value we're able to generate out of personalization for the company by creating this agility, by creating this now much better framework. And one of the other big values or benefits that we were able to reap from applying product management is because we had this long-term approach, we had the time and we had the opportunity to think, how can we build a best-in-class system? Whereas in the past, each of these use cases had used more or less, if you think of it as what was available off the shelf. Now we've really invested the time into building a state-of-the-art, deep learning-based, task-agnostic system. And so we're prepared for growth, and we're prepared to be on the same level or playing field as some of the even best tech companies out there that are doing personalization at scale.
No, but it sounds like, but a third element of this is just enabling innovation, that you're able to go in and both try out potential candidate models for existing use cases, but also just to go after new use cases and get to value much faster, get to an MVP much faster, and then be able to continuously improve on it. But is that fair to say? It's those three dimensions. It's the scale, the improvements in accuracy and performance, as well as the ability to innovate faster.
That's absolutely fair. And in fact, again, what comes with thinking about data science and AI capabilities as a product is a long-term thinking and investment in the platform and the engineering that you need to really support it at that scale. And so, to your point, where the innovation is coming from is our investments in an ML ops platform that really supports personalization at scale. So that enables us to try out different models, try out different frameworks, enables us to really tap into now the rich ecosystem of language models that's out there that are super powerful in terms of being able to help us do a better job of personalizing our customers' experiences, whether it's trying to personalize their search inputs or what they are talking to us about, et cetera. And so ultimately those investments were only we were only able to really justify making them, and we were only able to map them to our roadmap by having that long-term vision, by applying product management from the get-go. Historically, majority of the investment has gone into model development as opposed to investing in ML ops, investing in engineering, investing in data even, right? What data do we need to build a best-in-class personalization system? As you know, oftentimes it really boils down to, do you have the right data? And so when you apply a product approach or a product model, the product manager is forced to think about all these other components or all these other inputs into the end result, and really balance out on any given in any given quarter or in any given um, planning session, where do I invest the team's time? Do I invest the time in better data, better MLS platform, or more models? And a lot of the times the answer is not always more models.
Well, it sounds like from the very beginning, it forces you to think about the use case from an end to end process, and so it can be very because you're working across multiple different teams. It can be very tempting in without a product management mindset and structure to have folks say, okay, well, we're just going to improve our data infrastructure and make this data. We're going to democratize data, or we're just going to provide folks access to the tools, or we're going to go in and build up our talent and focus on our talent strategy. And it sounds like, well, this forces you to start with the end in mind, so to speak, and make sure that you are thinking across all of those different dimensions simultaneously.
And absolutely, and also not be too rigid about your originally intended plan. That's again part of what product thinking and product management brings, which is on any given quarter, priorities may very well shift for a product team, and that's due to the shifting priorities of the business or the shifting economic environment or whatever have you. And so again, that's the value that orienting this way, and really trying to plan in short increments and focused on delivering value in the shortest period of time possible brings to the team. To your point, we're not really focused on trying to stick to an existing roadmap just because we committed to it 12 months ago.
Yes. Now, you're making this sound very easy, and I know that it's anything but. You mentioned, I think you hinted at previously that actually you need to have a lot of components in place in order to do this, whether that be from executive sponsorship, but also buy in from a lot of different stakeholders. Are there, for folks who are hearing this and saying, great, we want to take a product led approach towards data science, are there things that you want to pitfalls that you want to alert folks to say, hey, keep your eye out for these things so that you don't get blindsided by them later?
Absolutely. So I think product management and just applying product management to data science is fairly new. I see a lot of companies, a lot of teams are very excited or trying out different approaches. A couple of pieces of advice that I have for folks out there. Number one, if you're trying to truly switch and transition to building data science or AI capabilities and need a full-on product management approach, you really ought to first make sure that you have a top-down support. So we're very fortunate and lucky that this started with Linda Avery and now Kalyani Shekhar, who's our interim CDO. We have full top-down support in establishing a product management function, organization, and leading the work that the teams are doing in this fashion and helping us really reimagine the processes, reimagine the priorities, right? Really refocus the organization on outcomes instead of output. And so I would really caution anybody to first establish and really think about, do I have that top-down support from my direct leadership or just the business leadership in general? And if by chance you do find a very strong sponsor, and let me qualify what a very strong sponsor should be. Ideally, it should be somebody who is not only excited about this because there's business value at the end of it, but really somebody who actually has also had experience with top product management talent, has either led product management themselves or has been the recipient of the value and the benefits of having strong product managers lead the team or lead a product, because that person is going to have not only the desire to get to those outcomes, but also clarity in terms of how well it's going and how they can support you. And so finding that sponsor and really using that sponsor to drive some of the change can be really, really helpful and really instrumental. The other piece of advice that I have is, as I was mentioning, start with the basics. I think a lot of today project teams can transition to product thinking instead of worrying about their deadlines or worrying about their budget. They can begin to worry about, are we delivering value? Are we delivering outcomes? And that's a very good way to ease into the product model. And then ultimately, to be very candid with you, even Verizon, even though we've made this investment, even though we're well on our way in transforming the organization and being a lot more product centric in terms of how we build data science and AI capabilities, there's still lots of opportunities even for us. And so the lesson here is you should continue to learn, you should continue to inform, you should continue to find and have discussions with peers that are trying to apply this at their organization, because as we said, no two data science teams are alike, no two organizations are alike. And so every organization is going to have their nuances, and I believe really every organization is going to require a very unique approach to how you get there. But if you are serious about building long-term strategic value with data science, with machine learning, or even AI, really you should be thinking seriously about applying product management, because it's going to help you create that vision, create that long-term focus and sustainability on outcomes.
Excellent. Well, if I hear you right on the first point, it almost sounds like this is a step beyond the traditional ideas of a sponsor. So this is almost more like an analytics or a data science leader at a very senior position. And I guess I feel like I'm seeing more organizations look to hire something that looks like a chief data analytics officer who is coming from, or at least has experience with, data science and machine learning projects, and that person with their experience can be not just a sponsor, but also be much more hands-on than a traditional sponsor would be. Um, and Linda Avery was definitely one of those unique individuals who had that background. But I guess the other part of it was, prepare for this to be a journey.
Absolutely.
So have the strong leadership, but also be aware that this isn't something that you can pivot on a dime. This is something where it's going to take a while to figure out what it means for your organization, let alone how you're actually going to go about and make that transition. And it sounds like start small, start incrementally, and start realizing those values and that value, and use that value to advocate for further investment and change.
And absolutely, and that's change management 101. But in general, finding the support and the sponsorship and really proving out that product management and the product model can bring value to your company, to your organization, to your data science team is really important. At the end of the day, we like to say that teams that are led by product managers and that use the product model should truly look and feel different compared to other teams. And that's almost the bar that we set for these teams, that they deliver faster, they deliver with higher integrity and quality. And ultimately, when you're on that team as a data scientist or an engineer, you feel different in terms of the way the work takes place, in terms of the focus on outcomes, in terms of the focus on improving, whether it be outcomes for customers or employees. There's a difference in how you interact with each other on that cross-functional team. And so proving that out and really using that, to your point, to then make the case for further expansion is going to be key for most people out there.
Well, the way that you describe it, I would imagine this would actually increase happiness amongst your data scientists and the other folks who are on the team, because as you've described it, this arguably less meetings, you're trying to minimize that, and much more focus on the outcomes and the impact. And when I think of in terms of what it is that usually leads to data scientist attrition, it's usually that, again, I'm spending too much of my time in meetings where we don't get enough done, and I'm not actually able to deliver on the tasks that I know we could do, but I can't execute on. So, I mean, do you find that it also, they feel different, but they're also actually more motivated and happier and more productive?
Absolutely. And there's also a person in the room, a product manager, whose job is to make sure that they're they're thinking, they're motivating their team, they're adding clarity, they're adding vision. They're really making sure that everybody on the team is not only engaged but really focused on the mission that they're trying to achieve. So absolutely, we're seeing big difference whether it's a data scientist or data engineer between the teams where we organize as products versus where we may be just trying to complete a project on time.
Mhm. Now, an entirely unfair question. I know Lynn Avery has mentioned in the past that finance has signed off on, has they themselves quantified the value of the investments in data and data science in that team that you were instrumental in starting, and it's a very large number. I think I've seen numbers of $1.5 to $2 billion. Now, entirely unfair to attribute it back to this, but how important is product management in delivering that kind of a success? Is it of those orders of magnitude in terms of what an organization can do if they apply well with the right conditions and the right approach and the right leader?
So there's a lot that can be attributed to product management. Obviously, not all of it. And as you mentioned, many data science or technical leaders are able to apply some of these principles in how they lead their teams. But ultimately, what we have found ourselves, and whether you look at personalization or some of the other areas, is actually orders of magnitude ability to scale the value that we're able to deliver. Again, both in terms of improving the outcomes on a case by case basis. So think of incremental sort of lift or improvement in the experience just by just having a much superior technical underpinning powering that experience, or also just the agility and the speed by which we can actually expand and deploy use cases. So ultimately, cumulatively speaking, we're able to really create, as I said, orders of magnitude more value than we were in the past. And so to answer your question, yes, a lot of what has helped us deliver the amount of value that Linda has publicly spoken about in the past, and what continues to help us to push that number even further and higher, is this ability to organize around specific capabilities that are aligned with the business needs and strategies that are long term in nature, so that as I like to say, every line of code, every dollar of investment is invested with a long term mindset and is ultimately yielding value for the organization for many years to come. And that's where you're not only reducing waste but ultimately getting kind of multiplicative value over time.
Well, I will interpret that as meaning that, in essence, we're just getting started. That there's yes, the results have already been high, but the potential for delivering even more value off of this going forward is even greater. But Alec, thank you very, very much for joining us, for all of your time and insights. If folks want to get in touch with you, what is the best way that they should reach out to you?
Shel, thanks so much for having me. Typically, the best place to find me is LinkedIn. So I'm happy if folks wanted to connect there and engage in fun discussions around how to apply product and just in general, how to really drive more outcomes out of data science at their organization.
Alec, thank you very much for joining us on the Data Science Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, Shel.
You've been listening to Data Science Leaders from Domino Data Lab. If you found our discussion insightful, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. Your support helps us deliver cutting-edge content and keep the data science community informed and inspired. We appreciate every review. Until next time.